Hello everyone and welcome back to round 5 of the Sinquefield Cup 2014, the strongest tournament ever held and the greatest tournament score ever achieved by none other than Fabiano Caruana. This is round 5 and so far Fabi defeated 4 incredible players. He defeated Topalov in round 1, MVL in round 2, Magnus Carlsen with the black pieces in round 3, and then with an engine-like precision and, well, with a Fisheresque-like performance, defeated Levon Aronian in round 4. And now he faces Hikaru Nakamura, who up until this point, Fabi never defeated in a classical game. I think he defeated him once in Rapid and once in Blitz, but never in classical. So this was huge going into this one. 4 out of 4 and undefeated, but never defeated Hikaru. And he does have black against Hikaru, so let's see what happens here. So far in 2024, Hikaru and Fabi faced each other some 54 times. The score is still in favor of Hikaru. Some 10 wins Hikaru, 8 wins Fabi, and 36 draws. So I just wanted to share that with you. Let's check out the game. Hikaru opens with pawn to d4 and Fabi goes pawn to d5. We have c4, pawn to c6, knight to f3, knight to f6, and knight b to d2. We have bishop to f5. All been played before, nothing new here. The Breyer variation of the Slav. Knight to h4 attacking the bishop, bishop e4, f3, and bishop to g6. And there are moves you can play here like c captures on d5, queen to b3 is possible, knight captures on g6 is possible. Hikaru first goes for pawn to e3. Okay, we have pawn to e6 by Fabi, g3, and bishop to e7. And now there are a couple of moves, games that reach this position, but after pawn to e3, it is now, as of move 9, that this position has never been reached again. And you can see that Hikaru has a most adventurous pawn structure. We have knight b to d7, c captures on d5, c captures and knight captures on g6, h captures, and the bishop to d3, and nicely continuing development. Fabi strikes in the center, pawn to e5, as it makes sense. There's a knight on d7, castles, and now castles by Fabi as well. You might think, okay, maybe he castles queenside because why not? But it is much safer. Hikaru already has pawns advanced in front of his king, so it might be easier for Fabi to attack. We have queen to b3, putting pressure on b7, and queen to c8 defending. We have knight to b1, investing some time in improving the position of the knight, and Fabi does the same. Knight to b8. Sorry, not knight to b8. First captures on d4, and only now knight to b8. We have knight to c3, knight to c6, and bishop to e3, nicely developing. We have queen to d7, connecting the rooks, and rook 8 to d1. We have rook f to d8 and rook f to e1. And while you could finish development with something like rook 8 to c1, c8, Fabi decides to remaneuver the knight first. We have knight to e8, bishop to f2, and knight to c7. We have bishop back to f1 and bishop to f6. And here you slowly get the idea of what this game will be about. There's an isolated d pawn on d4, and there's also an isolated pawn on d5. But it could be a bit easier for Fabi to attack the d4 pawn than it is for Hikaru to attack the d5 pawn. Unless he throws in a pawn to f4 and then fianchettos the bishop. And pawn to f4 is in fact the strongest move recommended by the engine here, but Hikaru played queen to a2. He wanted to get b4 in so fast that he decided that b4 was stronger than f4, and I mean, who could blame him? It very often is. But Fabi now stops pawn to f4, he plays pawn to g5. Okay, pawn to b4, pawn to g6. We have queen back to d2 and king to g7, nicely improving the position of the king. We have pawn to b5, chasing away the knight, and knight to e7. We have bishop to e3, putting pressure on the g5 pawn, knight to e6, nicely defending on g5, but also putting pressure on that d4 pawn. We have bishop to h3, pinning the knight, and knight to f5. Now, blocking the bishop, but also putting the pressure on the bishop on e3. And you have to give up either the dark square bishop or the light square bishop. You could play bishop to f2, but then black's position is just excellent. The other rook is coming to c8. The queen can come to c7. You want to get the queen off of the this diagonal, and there will just be too much pressure on that d4 pawn. You're going to have to capture at some point. So that's why Hikaru captures right away, g captures, and pawn to f4 now. But Fabi says, all right, I mean, you've just given up your light square bishop. You have queen and bishop on dark squares. Of course, I'm going to keep the position closed. Pawn to g4, queen to d3, attacking the pawn on f5, and here, if you waste a move defending the pawn on f5, let's say you move the knight, then Hikaru is just back in the game. But Fabiano says, nope, rook 8 to c8. He attacks the knight on c3, stopping queen captures on f5. And now with the rook in the game, it's very hard for Hikaru to find a move here. Just to give you an example, knight to a4, the engine says is what should be played here. But who plays this? Knight to a4, rook c4, again going after this d4 pawn. That's the theme of the game. And now there's just no good move here. If you play knight to b2, sort of kicking away the rook, even rook captures on d4. And now after bishop captures and bishop captures with check, you also pick up the knight, and black will just be much, much better. So after rook 8 to c8, rook back to c1, and now rook to c4. Fabi again hones in on that d4 pawn. We have knight to e2 defending, and now knight to c7. If you capture on b5, then you lose the f5 pawn. So knight to c7, you keep the tension, you put pressure on the b5 pawn, but now also the f5 pawn is defended. We have knight to c3. You could also play pawn to a4, but it doesn't do all that much since it's undefended. So knight to c3, and now rook to c8, doubling up on the c file, h3, g captures, king h2, and now knight captures on b5. We have knight captures, queen captures, and the question is, can you capture on f5? Well, now you definitely can, because if queen captures on f5, queen b2 check, and look at this, there's nothing you can put in between the black queen and the white king. So you either move the king and get checkmated, queen to g2 checkmate, or you capture on h3, and then you run into rook h8 check, and you either give up the queen and then get checkmated, or you play king to g4, and now a very simple queen to g2, and there's no defense. Either rook to h4 is checkmate, or you somehow stop that, but then you vacate d2 square, queen to e2 will be checkmate. So after queen captures on b5, king captures on h3 right away by Hikaru, and now queen back to d7, defending on f5, and just keeping a much, much better position. We have king back to g2, pawn to b5, we have rook to b1 attacking the pawn on b6, on b5, and pawn to a6. We have rook b to c1, again offering a trade, and queen to e6. And here, Hikaru is already lost, but it's merely a matter of how he wants to go down. But he finds a most resilient idea, and that is bishop to f2. And here we reach a position where many moves are fine, but there is one that just forces resignation. So feel free to pause the video and try to spot this idea while I give you a couple of seconds, and no, it was not played by Fabi. So for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it is queen to e4. That is the move. Congratulations if you found that, but Fabi did not, and Fabi just played a rook captures on c1. So he did give up the queen, but not in the proper way. The difference is, after queen to e4 with check, you create a passed pawn, because now you have to capture the queen on e4, otherwise you're just going to lose the queen on d3. So after queen to e4 with check, you're going to play rook captures on e4, and once the rook captures on e4, you're going to play d captures on e4. Of course, you capture with the d pawn, not with the f pawn. So, for example, captures. And now after queen to e3, you capture on c1. And now it's much different than the line that we actually get in the game, because the pawn on e4 is a passed pawn. And there's just no move that white can make here. You can start pushing the d pawn, but then just rook c2. And after, let's say, pawn to d6, rook d1. And now there's nothing here. d7, you just capture it with the rook. Bishop d4, obviously very strong. Rook to d2, rook captures on f2. All of these are easily winning ideas. So after this bishop to f2 move, queen to e4 is the most powerful. Fabi played rook captures on c1. This is how he decided to go about it. Rook captures, we have pawn captures on e6, and now it's different. Okay, it's still two rooks for the queen, but instead of having this pawn on e4, now you have a backwards pawn structure, and this is much, much weaker. And had Hikaru found queen to e2, it would be very, very hard for Fabi to win this, because the queen comes to e2, attacks e6, something like rook to c6 defense, then you play queen h5, you put the queen on e8, and once you infiltrate the back rank, even though you're better better with black, it's going to be hard to win. But Hikaru missed it. He played pawn to g4 right away, and now f captures on g4, unfortunately missing the brilliancy. There is such a brilliant move here. It could very well be the most brilliant move of the game, even though it wasn't played. But just for fun, again, you know, have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. If you found this one, you are probably rated over 2550, maybe even 2600, and should not be watching my videos, so you probably haven't. But just in case, it is bishop to h4. Looks like a silly move because you've just blundered your bishop, but there's no defense. Rook to c2 is coming, so you have to do something, and there's really nothing to try. You can put a queen here, but then again you attack the queen, and of course if you capture on h4, which is the move that you guys are wondering, now not rook to c2 check because the bishop just goes back, you actually play rook c3 and you trap the white queen. Beautiful. There's no square for the white queen, and there's no compensation to be had here. Captures, and the rook versus bishop endgame is completely winning for black. It's not even worth discussing. So big brilliancy missed here by Fabi. Instead, f captures on g4 was played, and now queen to e2, and Hikaru is back in the game. King to f7, we have queen to d3, rook 1 to c2, pinning the bishop, and now queen to h7 with check. We have king to e8, and now pawn to f5. Here, king to f1 is the move that holds the game, but yeah, little time on the clock, and it's actually little time on the clock for Fabiano, but I guess Hikaru wanted Fabiano to feel the stress, so he didn't sidestep the bishop captures on d4 idea. I guess he thought it's, I mean, it's either a draw or, you know, maybe even I win, but he played pawn to f5. And okay, Fabiano calculates well. He thought maybe, okay, if he captures, queen captures, then everything is open. There's no way for the black king to escape. But Fabi accepts the challenge. He plays bishop captures on d4, and if Hikaru doesn't have some sort of a perpetual or a checkmate, then it's game over. We have queen to g6 with check, king to d8, and queen captures on e6. Rook captures on f2 with check, king to g3, rook to c3 with check, king captures on g4, and queen to g2 check. We have king to f4, rook to f2 check, king to g4, and now king to c7. Fabi says, well, this is all very nice. I'm just going to move my king. There's no perpetual here. We have queen to e7 with check, king to b6, and now queen to d8 with check. Rook blocking with rook to c7. Queen captures on d5, and now just bishop to c5. And yes, Hikaru does have a passed pawn, but there's no way to cross the f7 square. We have queen to d8, pinning the rook, but now king to b7. Pawn to f6, and now just bishop captures on a3, and there's nothing more to be done. A few more checks can be given, like queen to d5 check, king to b6. We have queen to d8, again pinning the rook. Bishop to c5, we have queen to b8 with check, rook to b7, queen to d8 with check, and king to a7. And now there are no more checks. Look at this. The bishop covers this diagonal, so you cannot use this diagonal to deliver check. And also the rook covers the 7th rank, so you cannot use the 7th rank. So that means the white queen is helpless. And also the f7 square is covered twice, so there's no way for you to ever play pawn to f7. It's time to resign, but Hikaru did play a few more moves. Queen to d5, maybe he gets some sort of a stalemate or something. Queen, a bishop to b6, and now king to g5. And also, it was probably difficult to come to terms to finally lose a game against Fabiano Caruana, but this was a special tournament for Fabiano for more than one reason, not just the result, but also beating Hikaru for the first time. Rook to c7, we have king to g6, pawn to b4, and queen to e6. Some moves are made, we have bishop to d4, and in this position, on move 67, that Hikaru Nakamura resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. So Fabiano is on 5 out of 5. The first half of the tournament is over. He will play 5 more games, and then we will see how the entire tournament went, as so far he's playing some brilliant chess. And okay, for Hikaru, you'd probably expect him to find those tactics that we've discussed in this game, but okay, you cannot find everything in every game, and this was definitely Fabi's game, Fabi's tournament, Fabi's everything. Here you're without a move, whatever you play. I mean, rook captures on f6 is coming next. You can play king h5, rook captures on f6. There is, like I said, no checks, nothing to try, nothing to play for. Few more moves, and the white king gets checkmated. Let your imagination finish the job here. That's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Brilliantly played by Fabi. Next round, he will face Maxim Veselin Topalov once again. We'll see how it goes and how the rest of the tournament goes for him. And you guys recommended some other games from this tournament that are also very nice, not played by Fabi, so we might check that out as well. You know, I'm definitely all up for it. Hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Robert Stadelman, Andrei Shrade, Robert Palandek, GersonChessFestival.org.gg, and Frank W.H. Schaefer for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day. And if you haven't seen my previous video, Brilliant Miniature by Igor Samonenkov, do check it out. See you soon.